Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the October 17th meeting of the Downers Grove Village Council. Copies of this evening's agenda can be found on the shelves on either side of this room, and if you're watching from home, the meeting agenda is also posted at the village website. Before we go any further, we wish to continue our proud custom of standing and reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we can proceed further, we need to establish a quorum that I ask our fine village clerk to please call the roll.
Commissioner Wallace?
Here.
Commissioner Earl?
Here.
Commissioner Waldeck? Commissioner White?
Here.
Commissioner Jose?
Here.
Commissioner Barnett?
Here.
Mayor Tully?
We have 5 members. That establishes a quorum. At this point, the chair would invite a motion to approve the minutes from the meeting of October 10th, 2017.
Mayor White, I make a motion to approve the minutes, council minutes from October 10th, 2017 as presented.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any comments, questions, or discussion before I ask for a vote? Any corrections? Hearing none, the chair invites a roll call, please.
Commissioner Earl?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor White?
Aye. The minutes are passed unanimously. Item 4 on our agenda is a public proclamation. I know Mayor Tully loves to do these, but I get to do it tonight, which is good. So let me read this proclamation. Whereas the village long-range plan from 2017 through 2019 identifies environmental sustainability as part of one of the strategic goals established by the village council. And whereas environmental sustainability refers to the village responsibility to deliver services in a way that protects or enhances natural resources. And whereas the village encourages homeowners to consider native plants, plant beds, and native landscaping. And whereas Illinois has designated the iconic monarch butterfly as an official state insect in 1975, this is a result of lobbying by school children. And whereas scientific studies point to the rapid decline of the monarch butterfly due to loss of milkweed habitat needed to lay their eggs and for the caterpillars to eat, resulting from development, land management practice, and chemical-aided agriculture in the United States and Canada. Now the mayor, Martin T. Tully, mayor of the village of Downers Grove, does hereby proclaim support of the DuPage Monarch Project to improve and increase suitable monarch habitat to make Downers Grove more monarch-friendly. Dated the 17th day of October 2017 at Downers Grove, Illinois. Signed by our mayor, Martin Tully, with a beautiful seal. And I believe we have people here from the Pierce Towner Heritage Alliance to accept the proclamation. Okay. I'll make sure I say that. Let me get that out. So here, who wants to take one? I didn't know it was working tonight. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Absolutely. Where does this go?
Mr. Lerner?
Yes.
Mr. Lerner?
Let's say wet.
You want to go for it? Okay.
Hi, Ken Lerner here on behalf of Pierce Downers Heritage Alliance. I just wanted to say a couple words in response to the proclamation regarding monarch butterflies. We very much appreciate the village's support and the proclamation in support of our monarch populations, and we appreciate that the village is also backing this up with activities such as the planned native plants garden for the Belmont train station area, which the village Public Works Department went out and secured a grant to offset the cost of. And we also appreciate the efforts of the Park District, the library, and as well, all of whom have put in native plant gardens to attract local pollinators and monarch butterflies. And all the folks who are doing it at home. I walk around on a daily basis, exercising myself and the dog, and I see more and more people utilizing their front yards or their parkways to put in native plants, and it's a great boon for our native insect populations. And lastly, for those who are interested in learning a little more about the monarch butterfly, I invite you to come down to the Pierce Downer Heritage Alliance annual public meeting, which will feature a presentation by Kim White, a local naturalist, about monarch butterflies. She's the expert. She's given this presentation many times. And our annual public meeting will be in just 2 days, on Thursday at 7 p.m. at the Lincoln Center, 935 Maple, up in room 503. It is free and open to the public. Hope to see everyone there. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe we have another speaker on this. Yes.
I'm Karen Britton. I'm Special Projects Manager for DuPage Monarch Project. And I just wanted to say, on behalf of DuPage Monarch Project, I would like to thank Mayor Tully and City Council and all the residents for making Downers Grove more monarch friendly. By the way, you are the 13th town in DuPage County to join. I'm working on Villa Park right now. The village's actions to preserve and increase habitat and protect monarchs will be an example, which become locally inspiring not only to your residents, but other villages, schools, churches, all of those people can get involved with their, areas. Thanks a lot for the monarchs. That's all I have to say. Also, this is our brochure, DuPage Monarch Project, that tells who our partners are, and I can leave some of these to put up front in the offices. And this is our brochure on monarch way stations for putting them in your yard. It's very detailed. Tells about the monarchs, how they can only use the milkweed for food, types of milkweed, and then in the back, on the back, is sources of getting those plants, local nurseries and native mail order nurseries. Also, two good sources are your native plant sale at Mays Lake in the spring, and also Wheaton has some too, but there's a lot of native plants now. Thank you once again, everybody, for doing this for the monarchs.
Well, thank you, and I do have actually a quick question. Is there a website that people who are maybe watching at home or here can go to find more information?
You can go to DuPageMonarchs.org.
That's okay, DuPageMonarchs.org.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes our one proclamation this evening. Item 5 on the agenda is public comments. This is an opportunity for anybody who's here this evening to come to the microphone and address the village council on matters that are not presented on this evening's agenda. If it's an agenda item, there'll be an opportunity to give public comment later in the evening. So if anybody here wishes to address the village council on any matter that's not on this evening's agenda, please come to the microphone, state your name and address, and let us know what you have to say.
Probably tired of seeing me. My name is Angelo Manzuelo. I live at 4935 Northcott. Before I start, I want to make sure I have the stormwater runoff fees correct. I pay money and the town takes care of the stormwater runoff. Not I pay money and the town uses my front yard as a retention basin. This Saturday, the 14th of October, there was record rain. There was also record flooding in my front, in the driveway. It was 5 times curb to curb, in fact, parkway to parkway. I've lived at that property for 10 years and nothing has changed. When can I expect something to change? So the stormwater fees that I've been paying, will that change? Will this be taken care of when the stormwater fees, to me, triple in 18 years? Or should I send the town a bill for the work that I do, clearing the drain and clearing the leaves from the street? Either I can bill this town for the work that I do, or maybe get me a part-time job with the town. I don't know. The other alternative is take care of the flooding that goes on every time there's a substantial rain. And it's not just my property, it's around the corner too, along the tracks. That's it.
Well, thank you for your comments, and I mean, there may be others, because I know there was a very substantial rain event which caused a great deal of flooding. First, though, there is one misconception I want to clear up. The purpose of the stormwater utility is not to guarantee that no one ever floods. There's a budget process that we're in the midst of doing right now, where the village collects X dollars and then spends X dollars entirely on stormwater management. Because it's a fee that was the result of last year's referendum, every dollar that we collect with the stormwater utility fee, we being the village, is spent on stormwater projects. The amount of that fee and the projects that we choose to fund with that fee is a decision that's made by the village council through its budget. It simply won't be enough to solve everyone's flooding everywhere. The fee would have to be considerably higher to do that. And if there's public will to do that, then that's something that can be discussed. Later this evening, we're having another of our 10 meetings on the budget. And the stormwater projects, which will be funded both next year and then there'll be bond issuances going out 4 or 5 years after that, those projects are up for discussion, and you're more than welcome to take a look at what projects are being discussed. I personally don't know when your personal address is going to fall into whatever the long-range planning is, but I don't recall ever there being some sort of promise that by paying the fee will guarantee no one will ever flood. What we're saying is that we will spend this money to mitigate it, and it's a collective decision how much we spend and what we spend it on.
I haven't seen a plan on a timetable for when any area is going to be abated, so
Okay.
I haven't seen
Yeah,
that.
all those plans, if you go to the village website and look for stormwater, we have lots of plans about when and where and the timetable for getting to various things. And it's on the agenda this evening, it's in the budget this evening, what some of the issues are we're looking to spend money on next year.
Okay, thanks.
My name is Joyce Blair, and I live at 147 White Fawn Trail in Deer Creek. Deer Creek, as I hope the village knows, floods repeatedly, often. I moved in 1985, so I've been there for 32 years. And for the first 10 or 15, maybe 20 years, it wasn't so bad, but now every time there's any kind of a rain, it floods. It's very disheartening when your street is flooded and the creek overflows the bank, and Fairview is closed, and 55th Street is closed, and my husband is a heart attack victim, so it concerns me about access, and I've been told that they would come and get us by boat. But it's very disheartening when you're driving through this to get to your home, and the Village of Public Works truck pulls up, and the men get out of the truck, and they assess the situation, and they say, "This is Westmont water," and get back in the truck. We've been fighting this for years. I realize that we're the last subdivision that backs up to Westmont, and the retention area belongs to Westmont, but their berm is higher than our berm, so Westmont wins and wins and wins, and Downers Grove, Deer Creek loses and loses and loses. And I'm tired of the water coming over the retention area. I'm tired of it going through my whole entire yard, going over my foundation, into my basement. We lost power for 12 hours, so we had no sump pump. That's another issue, I understand, but it doesn't matter. It floods all the time. Deer Creek overflows, and then 55th Street is closed because of Barth Pond, and I'm like a couple of blocks away from it. Fairview is closed. If I can't get into my house off of 55th Street, and I can't get into my subdivision off of Fairview, what do we do? And Sunday, as I drove down the street, I saw 2 or 3 restoration trucks in the driveways. I know for a fact, I didn't know about this meeting until this afternoon, and that person had a few inches of water in their basement. I talked to a neighbor 2 doors down. They had 3 feet of water in their basement. We're all getting water in our basement. In 2014, and I realized that was another flood, we had multiple homes. It was like a disaster area when you walked around the block and you saw on all the garbage at the curb. It was lower levels, it was couches, it was TVs. One neighbor, the water was so strong that it broke the windows in her basement, flooded her basement up to the ceiling. That was 2014. So all these people put in all their claims to their insurance. We're all Downers Grove taxpayers. You guys have heard this before, not from me. This is my first time. I'm not even feeling well, but I came today to do this. You've heard from Deer Creek before, but I think because we're a small subdivision, no one cares. And I'm tired of Downers Grove saying it's Westmont, and Westmont not caring because they're not Downers Grove. I'm paying taxes to this village. Again, it's disheartening to have them say, this is Westmont water, and walk away.
Well, I can speak directly to Deer Creek, as I've walked through that community, and I know what happened in 2013 as well. All water flows downhill, but Deer Creek is definitely part of Downers Grove, and it's something that our community, it's one part of our community. We have to take care of the entire community. What I can tell you, it's not much consolation now, is that after this, is that the current plan of capital projects includes a significant project to improve the situation in Deer Creek. And I know in years past, I've met with other residents of Deer Creek and showed them the plans that are being undertaken. And there's, in the budget that we're continuing to discuss, in 19, 20, 21, and 22, there's $5 million each year for stormwater projects, so that we can start making the changes that are needed to help alleviate the problems. I wish we could have done it sooner. I wish it could have been done
So my
already.
understanding is that I have to wait 4 more years for something to
Well,
help us? So how many
it's-
more floods is that?
Well, there's no way to say. It's just how fast, because that depends on when the rain comes.
But in 1985, when I bought my house, this didn't happen. And now it's happening. You know, they're building more houses off of Fairview. They're doing flag lots where they're building houses in the back. I know for a fact that some of those houses were, the yards were flooded. I wasn't inside the houses this time. So there's more building. It didn't happen in 85 or 95, but it's happening now. Every time there's water, we're all holding our breaths.
And that's a very real problem.
So I have to wait 4 years and however many floods.
Well, the thing is that it's how soon is it possible physically to go out and do the work? Because these are major projects costing millions of dollars. There's going to be 2 $10 million bond issuances to...
But you said you've walked it, sir.
Well, no, and I know, and that made sure that Deer Creek was on the list of projects. There's projects all over the village that have to be done. And Deer Creek's definitely one of the areas that have projects.
Good, because I have 2 entrances, and again, you know, oh, well, don't worry, we'll rescue by boat. That's not
Well,
exactly
that's
comforting.
No, there's projects that need to take care of that.
So the answer is then 2021?
Well, I don't want to speak to the details right now on the microphone because there is a written report saying when the projects are, but I do know that Deer Creek is part of the projects that are determined. I think that the manager has more information about that.
In 2014, we prepared a long-range plan for capital improvement projects based on a study coming out of the 2013 floods. There are 3 areas in town that are in the FEMA floodplain that are in the report. These areas, the challenges are great. The solutions are not straightforward and take quite a bit of engineering and several millions of dollars on each of those projects. Those 3 projects do not have a specific timeline for construction. They are in the later phases of the multi-year plan. A lot of that is just trying to figure out what a solution is to try to mitigate water in a floodplain. So I would say that would be at the later time frame after 2021.
But it's in the plan.
It's in the plan.
It's part of the 14 identified areas.
But just want to set the expectations, given the complexity
Yeah, absolutely.
and cost and the time it takes to design
The last thing
projects
I-
in the
yeah.
flood, and the regulations that occur in the floodplain, this would be several years out.
I have 2 comments, and one, sir, is that not every home in Deer Creek is in the floodplain, because I've looked at that myself online, so not every home is in the floodplain. And 2 is, it affects our property values, and we all know that even though our property values go down, or people don't want to buy our houses, our taxes keep going up. And I know that's because of other issues, but this is very discouraging for us. And there was a lady that happened to be there when the gentleman said, well, this is Westmont Water, and got in the truck and drove away. And she said, my house is on the market right now, and I've never had water, but I'm in the floodplain. And if I get a drop of water in my basement right now, I'm going to have to disclose that I have water in my basement. I don't know what happened, but the water had gone over the creek, across her street, and up her lawn. I haven't seen her since Saturday night. I don't know her name, so I don't know if she had water in her basement, but her house is on the market. And she has this in the remarks, that she's never had water. And that's what her concern is. So it's affecting us a lot. I mean, it's affecting our property values. And she's in a floodplain, but not every house in Deer Creek is in a floodplain, and yet they're flooding.
I want to be careful not to make any specific promises that maybe I don't have all the,
Sure.
all the information on, because I absolutely don't want to build up false expectations. That said, I do know that in the current round of spending, which is $20 million or more, identifying projects that will help Deer Creek is in that. When it falls in there, that's a complicated detail that I'm really not, I just can't say off the cuff what that is. But I do want to assure you that we're very well aware that these types of problems have a great impact on Deer Creek. And it's not been ignored. It's just that when it comes time to spend $25 million of taxpayer money, and that other people, then that sometimes pushes people back a little bit. So that's, but it has to be done. At least in my opinion, I'm only one of 7, and that's what the stormwater utility is for: is to provide a secure, stable, sustainable funding source, so that we have the money. And actually, because of the referendum, all of stormwater management is going to come from the stormwater fee. It's not going to come from the property taxes. And most of your property taxes go to the school districts anyways. They don't go to the village. So really, it's going to be the magnitude of the stormwater fee, whether or not this political support, as to how fast it increases, as to how soon we can get the projects. Because all stormwater, based on the recent referendum, all stormwater projects are funded with the stormwater fee.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tom Balsamo. I live at 5718 Webster Street. And again, I want to talk a little bit about the stormwater. I understand the projects are ongoing. On my block, I'm at the corner, and the house 4 to the north of me is 3 lots off of the creek that runs through. And he had a raging river running through his yard. The village has already acquired 5 lots on the block, 3 on our side, on the west side of the street, and 2 on the east. There's a house waiting to be torn down still. They tore down one house earlier this summer, but they didn't do anything for the creek when they did it. Now, I know there's probably steps to it, but I know in the past, the houses they tore down last year, the 2 they tore down last year, instead of making it lower, they made it higher, which then pushed more water towards him, which then pushed more water towards me. And it's so, looking at our neighborhood, I'm not quite sure if there's an engineer involved in the layout of the land or what's going on, but it seems like the creek comes under Main Street and turns behind this gentleman's yard and heads over, and then turns and goes again towards Barth Pond. It seems as if they made a high spot instead of a low spot, so he now gets more water. He had probably over 8 inches of water going through his house. He kept up with it and kept it down to 4 at one point in time, but then it went up higher. It was flowing over his foundation wall. The village guys came out and they did drop him some sandbags, which he was very appreciative of, but it didn't solve the problem. And I'm just wondering, when these houses came down, how come they made mounds instead of valleys in the area?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm going to have to defer that. I'm not a civil engineer, and I really don't know the details of the specific address, but it's my belief and understanding, village staff will be very responsive if you get an address that, to talk specifically about that particular location. I just am not qualified.
Right.
From a technical point of view, and I don't have those facts, but I think people from the village staff will be able to talk with you about that specific address.
Okay, because I know Commissioner Host has been on our block before and seen the flooding in the past. In 14, he was there.
Yeah, and I could come and see the flooding, I still wouldn't know.
Right. I just was wondering if there was...
That's not my training.
I was just wondering who the engineering group was that was involved in making these decisions, or if this is just, we're tearing the houses down, we're going to give open land, which is great for stormwater accessibility so it soaks in, But if they were to make the swales proper instead of mounting them up, the water would go there instead of into this man's yard, into our yards, making us all in this water hole.
I just apologize. I really cannot answer those questions because I don't know the information and it's not my area of expertise.
Okay.
You know, anything I told you would be just
Sure.
a wild guess.
Sure.
And it would be best that you know, that you do speak to people. We have to, yeah, is that there?
Yeah, generally speaking, we are obviously aware of that. That's why we're trying to, that's why we've been purchasing those houses. That's the first step, is acquiring and knocking them down. The second step is to try to increase capacity of that area. That's in initial design phases right now. I don't have a specific date yet, but our engineering team, working with outside engineering consultants, is coming up with a plan to actually address those concerns that we are aware of.
Okay. And you get more information, specific information about that particular location. And again, that's an area we've long been aware of.
Yeah, well,
It's a problem.
I've lived in Downers Grove my whole life. I grew up on Lyman, and I bought a house a couple blocks away. And I've seen the water come. I know it's because of building. I know how, progress goes. I understand. I did an addition on my house years ago, so I understand how it happens. But it seems as if, the village has made great strides in trying to make it so that each person has to have the rain gardens in their front yard when they do additions, or be able to maintain the water that they've displaced. And I think that's great. But it seems as if this piece of the puzzle, which was, we're going to acquire these lots to eliminate this, they acquired the lots, but then it stopped. And it hasn't progressed forward. And I just was wondering if there was a timeline on when we would see this, because I think it would help Deer Creek and all that too, because the less water going to Barth Pond, the more water can come from that way as well to land in Barth Pond to hold there. And it would slow it and make it still get over to Barth Pond in its time.
Yeah, the entire system's interconnected all the way from where the rain falls to the ground to the Gulf of Mexico. I mean, it's all
Sure.
It's all interconnected. But again, I hesitate to offer any. And then I think the village staff can get you some of the specific answers about what's happening.
Okay, so there's someone at the village I could speak with,
Based on their schedule, just get the information. And
Looks like a 2019 project, but we'll verify that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I just want to say one thing. Even if we're not able to give people who've had storm damage specific answers this evening, the fact that you're here and speaking, it's getting people's attention. It's making it clear both to the village council and the village staff that this is an important issue we have to address. If I had $1 billion check, we could solve it tomorrow, but we don't have that much money just laying around, so that's part of the budgeting process. So even if you don't feel comfortable that I'm fully answering your question, or don't think that you wasted your time coming up here, because your concerns are extremely important for us to understand what the issues are that you're facing. So with that, we're still in public comments of a general nature, items not on the agenda.
Hi, my name is Rory Brenza. I live at 1928 Curtis Street in the Hillcrest area. My question is, I'm not here necessarily for the stormwater runoff issues. I mean, we have those issues over there, like many other places. I'm actually here for, it coincides with the stormwater runoff. Back in 2008, I was a project manager for a construction custom home builder out of Hinsdale in Western Springs. And at the time, I never really thought more into it until now in retrospect. However, I happen to know it's common practice for new home builders, remodels and all that they're connecting their sump pump discharge lines and their downspouts for the outside gutters for the roof into these sanitary lines, which is causing major problems, obviously, with the sanitary backup. That was the issue I had Saturday night, was quite a few feet, maybe 9 houses worth of basements being flooded with sanitary toilet paper and such. So I guess what my question is there any type of enforcement that is stopping these builders? I understand they do the final inspections before people can take possession of the home and all that, but what keeps them, or is there a way to keep people from having this tied in after that inspection has taken place?
My saying is that does violate code, and I'll look to staff to address, the specific details of that.
Yeah, so at the time any improvement or new construction takes place, as part of the closeout inspection, we make sure that there's no cross connects into the sanitary sewer line. After that, it becomes the jurisdiction of a different government, the Downers Grove Sanitary District, and I believe they do have an enforcement campaign and an approach, so we can check with them and get them in contact with the residents in this area.
To see if there's instances of that. Just as though one comment, I did read that part of the problem with the sanitary sewers is that the sanitary sewer lines are somewhat permeable, and when the ground is saturated, it just soaks through the sanitary pipes and goes into them. And then that's not the only cause, that's part of the backup. And that's part of the overall picture, but that is, as the manager Fieldman said, the Downers Grove Sanitary District is an independent unit of government that we have no jurisdiction, they're a separate government that's appointed by the county. We have no control. We work with them, but we have no direct control over that unit of government.
Correct. No, I understand that. And the question was more of, as does the village, are they the ones that are supposed to kind of police that, or is that sanitary?
Is that both?
It's just odd because it's just, even a heavy passing thunderstorm, we flood with sanitary every single time.
I understand.
It's not just the stormwater. I mean, that's not even an issue. I understand 8.5 inches of rain is an unbelievable amount of rain in 24 hours, and I totally understand that. But where my frustration comes in is the sanitary part. I mean, I have the lids blown off the street right on Curtis and Glenview in a heavy thunderstorm. It's gurgling out of the lids, the lawn, the street, everything is a chalky gray once it finally dries, and that's including our basement, almost every time. I don't know if it's a failure on sanitary or if it's the lines being overrun because people are dumping. And as I said, I know people do it because when I was a project manager for the builder, we did it. I just, at the time, never realized what you're doing to other people downstream when you do stuff like that. And there's ways around it, and I understand you're not going to knock on people's doors and you're not going to, go in there and do inspections, but I guess it's just more of the obvious without hoses or penetrations coming out of the side of the house to show that that's where a sump pit is going to be dumping the water on their own property, so that way it can, as best it can, permeate into the ground as opposed to inundating this sanitary line every single time it rains, and then we have to clean this stuff up every time.
Again, I'm a little bit at a disadvantage. It's my understanding that is currently strictly prohibited, that you cannot do that. If it is happening, it's a violation. I just don't know what the frequency is where it's not being caught. But I do, but it certainly is my belief that that's not permitted. And if it is permitted, then we need to find out about it and stop it. And I just can't speak to how prevalent that actually is in any given area. But it shouldn't happen. It's also, and it's a joint issue of both the village and the sanitary district.
Okay, and that's the only, like I said, I know there's nothing you can do about it as far as policing it for the most part, but I just want to get it out there that, I happen to know that it happens, and with it backing up as often as it does with that frequency, it's just odd that 3-inch rain it backs up, an 8-inch rain it backs up. There's either a major problem with the sanitary line that needs to be dealt with sanitary district, or somehow people are, there's just too many people dumping into that line. And, at 3 o'clock in the morning for it to back up, I can't imagine a lot of people taking showers and dishwashers and doing laundry at that time. And then sanitary says, well, it's because of the heavy rain. Well, the heavy rain doesn't go into the sanitary line. It's not supposed to anyway, for the most part. They're supposed to keep that out of there. And that's what the storm sewer is for. So I guess I just wanted to get it out there to see if it's enforceable, or if something could be done to stop it. So
I just will say this again, though, because I did read this, that the sanitary district is engaging in a program to line their pipes to prevent the permeation of stormwater, which basically is in the soil. When the soil is saturated, it just goes through the pipe, into the pipe. And that's part. So I don't know all the technical details, but you raise a very important issue, and that's something I think, as I said before, you have everybody's attention. And we'll do, yeah.
Okay, and then finally, as far as I understand what you're saying about the permeable pipe and you're getting stormwater that's going in there, it also, and again, this isn't necessarily just your issue, but what they're doing is when that line is charged and those caps are blown off, when I call, their way of rectifying that is to come and remove the cap, and they're putting the cap with all the holes in it, like your typical storm drain cap, on there to allow the water out of it. And then they drive away, and then they put a sign up that says raw sewage water, stay out of the water. Well, without being funny, they want you to stay out of the water, but they're venting all that water into our yards, and it's going right into our basements. And now we're dealing with it, and their only solution is to just vent their line without any regard to all of our basements who are taking all that water. I had water up to my basement windows, and it wasn't necessarily just rainwater. I mean, it's obvious what was coming out of there, but that's because they removed these caps, and their explanation is, well, they have to vent it.
And see, and that calls for a technical answer that I think kind of goes beyond it. That's the pressurization of the whole system is very complicated, and that's, I don't feel I can address that any further, but it's, I mean, there's no question.
We could provide the information for that separate government who has their own board, their own meetings, their own executive director, programs, the whole bit. They can be reached at 969-0664. They are aware of this issue. We talked to them over the weekend. We've talked to them many times about their inflow and infiltration issues. I know they're working to address them, but they're probably the best venue to speak to them directly about these kind of issues.
And I do also want to add, though, it is from my own observations that our village government does collaborate and have a great deal of ongoing communication with these separate units of government. I mean, they have their own independent authority, but I know everything that I've seen all the years I've been involved with the village is that the village staff's very good about maintaining lines of communication to try to solve these types of issues as best as can be through collaboration, cooperation, and communication. So it's a very real issue. I can't offer any more than what I've already said.
Totally understand. Like I said, I just wanted to get it on record that, you know, they're not helping anybody by opening those caps, and that's more of the issue was the sanitary part. I mean, not necessarily the water.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Other comments of a general nature, items not on this evening's agenda?
Gail Tatterson, 1240 Gilbert. I won't go into my experiences this weekend with my basement, but like the other people in the room, we all know that Downers Grove has had a lot of water problems. I've lived in the house for 40 years, and everyone knows in Downers Grove, if they've lived here a long time, that there are serious water problems. I don't know how long all of you have lived here, but I think we have to stop just talking about the remediation, and we have to talk about what's causing it. I talked to the public works engineer last summer who told me that there was more rain in the last 10 years than ever before, and that might lead to a greater amount of water coming through. And I can see it in my backyard. I have a creek that goes from 2 feet wide to 30 feet wide in maybe half an hour. So the question is, what's causing this? Is it more rain? Possibly. But it might also be more development. The law says you can build just about as big a house as you want, but you are all approving all of the ordinances that rule Downers Grove's water, okay? You make the ultimate decision about what's going to be built in, say, downtown Downers Grove, where we're getting 3 new high-rise condos and apartment buildings. And by the way, what is the retention required on those buildings? What % retention? Does anyone know? You should know that.
That's in the
You
approval
should know
documents.
it. You really should. It's like the ultimate problem in Downers Grove, water. And every time, just want you to think that every time you approve something, you should be thinking about the effects, because you have your stormwater tax, but it's not going to be enough. The problem's going to grow. We're going to pay more taxes. And people's quality of life is being decreased. So it's really your fault. I mean, not just your administration, but all the past ones I've seen. I mean, you have to think about that. Why are we building these buildings downtown? How many people will be impacted? So I really, request that you think that when you're making your vote, doing your votes and gathering information, think about water.
Well,
It's really the worst thing to have to deal with.
If you'd been here last week, a majority of this council indicated its desire that for all new development, there be requirements of on-site detention. And that would be...
No, that's not a new development.
No.
On-site
If somebody builds a new house, they're required to install on-site detention to mitigate the impact
I
of that.
think that's a great idea.
Yeah, and last week,
And where are they going to put it if they're allowed to build a house that goes from 5 feet from one lot line to 5 feet of the other
if they
line?
can't fit it in, they can't build a house.
Okay, I
And,
think, yeah.
and last week, a majority of the people up here thought that was a good idea. So we are looking to move forward
Thank you, I'm glad to hear
with
that.
ways to solve
Very
this.
glad.
Yeah, and water's a huge problem in this town. It's always been a problem, and increased development.
Yes, exactly my point.
Yeah.
Yes, so
And as I said,
it's like the ultimate problem,
you have our attention.
yeah. And it's all coming my way, too. So
No, you
so
have
I
our-
do have, an ulterior motive, but it's not right to impact everybody's life quality.
Oh,
in that
I
way.
think, well,
Okay.
not just you, but everybody impacted, I think, has our attention.
Thank you.
Any other comments, public comments of the general nature of matters not on this evening's agenda?
Hi again, my name is Jenny Garst. I live at 5230 Farrar Court. I've been here the last 2 meetings, and I'm not here to repeat my story, but I am here to thank everybody else who showed up tonight, and please encourage you to continue to show up and invite everybody you know who's been affected by stormwater. Keep coming. It isn't enough to be upset after a large storm, because these large storms have happened. As several of you have said, you have lived here for decades. You've seen it get worse. You know how many administrations this has gone through and how it has come to a fever pitch before with administrations and how it has just been kind of pushed down the road. Please, let's make this the end. Let's keep the pressure going so that this is the last time we, as a village, have to have this amount of push for stronger stormwater management. I really do not go back to your homes and let this be the last time we see you here. Spread the word. Encourage people to come. Your voices need to be heard. I thank the council so much for these last several meetings, for listening to us, for reviewing the stormwater management plans that have been put forward before, and for realizing that this is a bigger issue, and for what seems like having a majority of you being on board. The next step, though, is that it needs to be put to the top of the list. I guess my question to you is, other than continuing to come, and other than continuing to encourage people, and continuing to say, this has to happen sooner rather than later, what is the next step? What is the next step for the council in this process? When is the new timeline determined? And how are things pushed earlier on the list, especially concerning making stormwater retention policies stronger?
My understanding of what's going to happen now is that village staff is going to evaluate the objective scientific observations that came from the recent storm, and all the recent public comment, and people who are experts in stormwater management, which, as you know, I'm not.
Neither am I.
I'm not.
I think we're getting closer, though.
Then, based on, this is professional expert work, which just can't be done in 15 minutes. I mean, it takes a lot of work, okay. And they're going to come back to us with a series of recommendations on how to address the problem. And we will evaluate those recommendations with public notice so that everybody in the community will have an opportunity to evaluate whether they're comfortable that these recommendations will address the issues. And at some future, and I just can't say whether it's next month or 2 weeks from now or 6 weeks, I just can't, because it's part of overall staff workload. But I do know the fact that people came this evening will help, accelerate the process. In a specific way, I can't say beyond that. But as I said before, you have our attention, and I don't think there's any question about that. Does the village manager want to add
Yeah,
something?
it is a top priority established by the council, which means it's a top priority that staff works on. So it literally is on the top of the list. And right now, we're aiming for late November, early December, package of options, a series of new ordinances for council consideration.
And I just want to add one observation. Some of the scientific and engineering calculations aren't rocket science. It might be harder than rocket science. So some of the things that have to be done to get this right, because you can push dirt around, but if you don't push dirt around the right way, you're going to make it worse, not better. So this is not something where we can just through willpower solve it. I mean, we need good engineers with smart solutions, and I'm not qualified to do that. We have people on staff that are. So we need to let them do their work and come back to us. And I'd say just watch the agenda, and and then check in every once in a while. If it seems like it's taking way too long to come back, say, hey, what's going on here? But believe me, like I said, I can't say it any stronger. You have our attention. There's no question that you've gotten our attention.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay.
Hi there. Boy, the last time I addressed the village council, I think Betty Cheever was mayor. It's been a while. I live at 1049 Grove Street, across from Fishel Park, a neighbor of Jen's, and I said I'd come out tonight just to try to get your attention one more time, just to let you know how much I feel this is important too. I think you guys have been at this for 15 years now, since 2002 we started talking about this. I think it's just time to get bold and get some more stuff on the books with the developers, and those detention boxes sound like a good idea, so that the water's controlled. Living on Grove Street, we love what you did with the permeable pavers. It seems to have really worked with the water runoff there. Grove Street used to flood a lot. So that experiment seems to work well. We do have rain gardens that the village put in. I'd like to see them maintained. They look like weed patches now, but I think they're doing their job. So just be bold. That's all I'd like to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other public comments of a general nature unrelated to matters on this evening's agenda? I do want to thank everybody. As I was watching the rain Saturday, and we had, knock on wood, we had seepage in our basement. I don't want to, my brother though lives near 50. My brother has water problems. I won't share any of his personal information, but he has, I know from firsthand experience, he's had similar issues in his own house. This is an important issue for the village to address. As I watched the rain falling, I says, well, people are going to come talk to us Tuesday night. Well, they should. So I expected to see people this evening, because this is an important issue. Along with police and fire, managing stormwater and providing drinking water are some of the core. Mr. Waldeck's not here. Solving these issues is part of the core services that municipalities need to provide. And through your elected representatives, we vote how much to charge you, taxes or fees, and then we vote on how to spend that money. So none of this is free, so it's going to, if we have to increase the stormwater fee to get more projects done, if there's political will to do that, then that's what may happen. That's what's going to happen. And those are decisions that will be made in the weeks and months and years to come, because, with increased development, stormwater is a huge problem that has to be solved. So thank you. With that, we turn to the consent agenda, item 6 on this evening's agenda. First, I want to make an announcement that item 6D, a resolution to authorize the First Amendment to subdivision improvement with Bradley Partners Holding, that's been removed from the consent agenda, and the chair invites a motion to continue 6D to a date uncertain.
Motion to continue 6D to a date uncertain.
Second.
Any discussion? Call that vote, please.
Commissioner Earl?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor White?
Aye. That motion passes. Item 6D has been removed from the consent agenda. With that, the chair invites a motion to approve the remaining portion of the consent agenda as presented.
Mayor White, I move to approve the consent agenda minus item D as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Council will not discuss this. Anybody in the audience wish to speak to any item on the consent agenda? Okay, roll call, please.
Commissioner Earl?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor White?
Aye. The motion passes. The consent agenda has been approved. Item 7 on our agenda is item 7 is our active agenda. We have one item on this, is to increase the number of beer and wine recreational facility licenses. Do I hear a motion with respect to that item?
Mayor White, I'd like to motion to adopt an ordinance increasing the number of beer and wine recreational facility licenses as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. It's our custom to ask people in the audience if they wish to speak in favor of or against this active agenda item before proceeding further. Okay, with that, any members of the council have any comments regarding this item? I'd ask for a roll call, please.
Commissioner Earl?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor White?
Aye. That motion passes unanimously. That concludes our active agenda. Item 8 is a first reading. There'll be 2 items this evening on our first reading agenda. Action will not be taken this evening on either item. It's simply a preliminary opportunity for the council to discuss and for the public to be made aware of new items that are coming before that. So item 8A is an ordinance regarding permit and background investigation provisions for food truck vendors. And with that, I'll turn the floor over to our village manager, Dave Fieldman.
Thank you, Mayor White. This, as you know, is an ongoing discussion. The council recently talked about this, I think it was just a few meetings ago. The ordinance that's in front of you for consideration amends food truck licensing regulations. Specifically, it requires what we call name-only background checks for owners of the food trucks. It maintains the requirement for fingerprint-type background checks for owners who wish to operate in public parks. This ordinance provides for a change in the licensing duration. It will now go to a 12-month rolling licensing instead of a calendar year license. And it would reduce the fee to a $100 application fee for the initial application and only a $25 annual renewal. We're able to reduce the cost because of the changes in the background procedures, which require less staff time. We hope we captured the direction that was provided by the informal discussion of council a couple weeks ago. We're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. With first reading items, it's our custom to have members of the council discuss the matter first, and after that, we'll open it up for public comment. Any members of the council have questions or issues or comments regarding this item? Commissioner Barnett.
Thanks, Bill. How do we anticipate actually managing the fingerprint for folks who want to operate a public park process? So a guy comes in and we charge him $100 and we give him a license, we run a name-only background check, and away he goes. Mm-hmm. Now what? So next week he shows up at a park.
Then he's in violation of the ordinance.
Well, right, I understand that. But
Right.
what are we going to do about it, and how are we going to know about it?
Well, like all food trucks that would be operating, there's a map of the areas you're permitted to operate in. In the same manner, if they operate in an area, any area outside of that, we would rely on somebody calling it in, letting us know, or observation by staff, and then we'd follow up with the enforcement remedies. Plus, they'll be told your license is only good in these areas, the business parks and the industrial parks, and is not valid in the parks. If they show up, it's a violation, we go to the remedy section.
Okay. So the same thing, I guess, is true on this ownership interest. We're just going to ask them if they're 5%. List all the people that are 5% or more, and then we'll run them. When this comes, assuming this comes before us unchanged from tonight, I'll be definitely supporting it because from my perspective, it's continued steps in the right direction. Those two elements still strike me as problematic because I don't think they're worth it, basically. I think they're administrative overhead for very little public gain, if any. And the process of enforcing and managing and monitoring over time I don't see a lot of value in it. So I'm thankful that my colleagues are continuing to evolve on this and broaden it and loosen it a little. That's, I think, good steps. I'd certainly encourage more, but I'm thankful for it. So thank you, guys.
Anyone else? Is there anybody here in the audience this evening wishes to speak to the podium about these proposed changes to the food truck ordinance? Violence? Yes. So you need to come to the microphone to have a public comment. If there's any item that's on the agenda, excuse me? Oh, yes, I think there's an e-remark system. I don't know the details right away, but if you go to the village website, there's a way to submit comments.
Or simply just email the mayor and council.
Oh, that's
we'll
true.
accept that as
Yes.
well.
What's that, mayorcouncil@dg.com?
That's correct.
Mayorcouncil@dg.com, dg.us, not .com, I'm corrected.
Downers.us.
Yeah.
Downers.us.
Check the website for email address. But there is one email address that all 7 of us and the village manager simultaneously receive. So with that email, so I don't necessarily put that on TV, but yeah, you can all reach us very easily. Actually, I do, because anybody can reach us at any time, and you don't have to put the 7 different email addresses. You can just do the one, and even those of us who aren't here will get the email. Okay, I think then item 8B is a continued first reading on the budget.
Thank you,
Manager
Mayor White.
Gilman?
Yes, this is actually the third in a series of 10 budget meetings. The general funds and related funds were presented publicly and discussed by the council on October 3rd. The capital and related funds, including stormwater improvements, were discussed on last week on October 10th. All other funds we are available to address tonight. From a percentage standpoint, and we've probably already presented and talked about 80 to 90% of the dollars expended in the proposed budget. So we're prepared to answer any questions the council may have about those remaining funds. We're looking forward to council direction and further discussion in November. October was designed for presentation and initial comments, and then in November, that's what we're looking to see if the council has any changes to the proposed budget and how we should make those changes. I wanted to point out that several questions about the proposed budget have been asked by the public and the council at the previous 2 meetings. And if you go to our budget section of our website, you'll see the responses to those questions are presented publicly. For those who are just joining us for the first time, I wanted to provide a rundown, the key points of this budget, which are found on the opening pages of the proposed budget, also on our website. As you know, in the general fund, which is our main operating fund, we are proposing a planned use of reserve budget with the use of about $320,000 of our existing reserve. This is prompted by the state budget 10% reduction in our income tax revenue. This is a one-time 12-month reduction, so we're budgeting accordingly using reserves in that amount as we expect those revenues to increase next year. It's important to note that our fund balance will remain at over 39% of our budgeted annual expenses. This is pursuant to our policy and best practices of the bond rating companies. This budget does include revenue from the newly implemented food and beverage tax of about $1.5 million. This is tax revenue to make up for, as a replacement for lost sales tax and lost income tax and lost home rule sales tax, all which have been affected by changing patterns of consumption and by changes in the state's budget. For the 7th year in a row, this budget has no increase for the property tax levy for operations. There is an increase for the property tax levy related to required public safety pensions. That has about a 4.3% bottom line increase to the village portion of the tax bill. This budget also reflects continued reduction in staffing. Another 2.0 full-time equivalent positions are proposed to be eliminated with this budget. There will be no layoffs. Those are through attrition. Those positions became vacant, have not been filled. This brings our overall staffing reduction in the last decade to about 15 to 20%. So a continued effort in reducing personnel expenses. This budget also includes funding to implement the facilities plan direction provided by council and a contribution to other post-employment benefits unfunded liability. Both of these were identified and discussed at length in our long-range planning session. So again, this budget does implement the plans and policies of our council. And finally, it does include and provide for continued investment in our infrastructure, as Mayor White was referencing our core services, $5.7 million for continued street maintenance, $4.6 million in stormwater project and maintenance improvements, and $8.6 million for our water system. This reflects our overall goal for top-quality infrastructure. Certainly, there's more in this budget than could be presented in this short time frame, but over the course of 10 meetings in over 3 months, I'm sure we'll get to any questions and concerns raised by the council. And of course, we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
And first, we'll start with council questions regarding the budget. Any further questions after our previous meetings? Okay, at this time, we'll open up, if any member of the audience that's here this evening wishes to ask a question or comment about the budget, now is your chance. I think you have 7 more after tonight. 6 more. So there'll be numerous more opportunities, but there's an opportunity right now if you have to say, if there's something you want to say about the budget. Okay, and I do want to add something though, since stormwater is fresh in everybody's mind. In section 4 of the budget, pages 20, 21, and 22 is the budget regarding the stormwater fund. And all of the money that's spent on stormwater mitigation comes from the stormwater fee, and all the money that's spent is spent through various line items contained in this budget. Now, there's a lot more documentation than is here, but this is the starting point in the summary, and this council chooses how much to impose for a fee and where and how to spend that money. So if you want to learn about what we're doing about stormwater, this is where it is, and if you want to guide where we go differently in the future, this is what you talk to us about. So that's just that we are responsive, and that's where you can find that information. With that, if there's no further comments, I think that concludes our first reading.
That's correct, Mayor White. Thank you.
Okay, let me find my agenda. Oh, it's the mayor's report. Uh-oh. Okay, next item is the mayor's report, and I just have very, very brief this evening. I do want to report to the council that I was invited in Mayor Tully's absence to kick off the crop walk on this past Sunday. I was very glad to do that. It's a wonderful event that's been going on for many, many years. And we have coffee with the council this upcoming Saturday at Fire Station 2. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So that's one additional opportunity to talk to us about the budget or anything else you wish to talk to us. So there's not 10, there's 11 chances that the public has to ask staff or council questions about the budget or anything else that concerns you regarding the village. And I think I'll remind everybody of the Pierce Downer Heritage Alliance Monarch Butterfly event on Thursday. I don't have the details, but you can find it at their website. And that'll conclude my mayor's report. We go to the attorney's report.
Thank you, Mayor. 2 items to present this evening. The first is an ordinance amending permit and background investigation provisions for food truck vendors, and the second is an ordinance adopting the fiscal year 2018 budget in lieu of passage of an appropriation ordinance. That is all. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Next, item 11 is council member reports. Commissioner Jose, any report?
Thank you, Mayor. I apologize for grabbing my phone during the meeting, but my wife texted to remind me to remind everyone else of the Roaring Twenties Casino Night fundraiser that's coming up this Saturday, October the 21st, hosted by the Downers Grove Junior Women's Club. It's at 7 o'clock at the Moose Lodge. Tickets are $50 per person, and the proceeds benefit the Junior Women's Club Charity Fund and the District 99 Operation Snowball. Tickets are available now at the Downers Grove Junior Women's Club website. That's www.dgjwc.org. Hope to see folks there. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Wallace?
No report, Mayor.
Commissioner Barnett?
Thanks, Mayor. A couple of things I wanted to mention about downtown this weekend. The HG&A annual pancake breakfast is this Saturday from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. at Ballydoyle. HG&A is an organization, nonprofit organization that provides kids and their parents with tools needed to navigate adolescence, which is, as we all probably know, a tough time for kids. It's a great organization, does a lot of good work, really helping parents and helping kids alike in our community. Pancake breakfast, I don't remember exactly how many years it is. How about Baker, you remember?
About 13.
It really is a fun event. It coordinates with Downtown Management's window painting, which I think is Rotary sponsored, I believe. And that weekend just is a ton of fun for downtown. So show up downtown, have some pancakes at Valley Doyle, help support HGNA, and then wander the streets with a lot of fun outside activities, people out and about. It's a great weekend. If you get there early enough, you get the best pancakes because they're cooked by some real professionals who start at the crack of dawn. And then another thing I learned of this afternoon, Sunday, October 22nd at Anderson's Bookshop, there's going to be a celebrity there. Valerie Bertinelli will be there with a book signing of sorts, and that can be a lot of fun. I don't know if you've ever been to a book signing before, but if you have any interest in either the subject matter or the author, they're a ton of fun. So for those of us that grew up with One Day at a Time and listen to Van Halen music, it might be a lot of fun to stop by Anderson's on Sunday and see Valerie Bertinelli. Point is, there's a lot going on in Downers Grove. There's always something going on in downtown Downers Grove that's a ton of fun. So find your way downtown this weekend. You'll enjoy it.
Thank you, Commissioner Earl.
And I have those details about the Pierce Downer Heritage Alliance Monarch
Oh, good,
talk.
thank you.
That's Thursday at Lincoln Center at 7 p.m. It's a free event, and we'd love to see you come out and learn some more about monarch butterflies.
Okay, thank you. That concludes council member reports. Our meeting isn't finished, however. We're going to recess into the committee room for continuing discussion of the future downtown development regulation framework. With that, we'll probably recess for 10 minutes or so, and then reconvene in the committee room. The chair invites a motion to recess to the committee room.
Motion to recess to the committee room in
The committee room.
next 10 minutes. We'll start again in the next 10 minutes.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, meeting is recessed. Back in about 10 minutes, more or less. Thank you. Are we live or?
Yeah, introduce me and then I'll introduce.
Okay. Welcome back, everybody. The Downers Grove Village Council is reconvened in the committee room. With that, I'll turn the floor over to Village Manager David Fieldman.
Thank you, Mayor White. This is a continuing discussion of future downtown zoning and other regulations changes. Thanks, everybody, for coming out tonight. Stan Popovich, our Community Development Director, will lead us through continued discussion. For those of you who were here last time when we got a late start and then we didn't have time for public comment until the very end, we've actually learned from that experience. And so there's a point pretty early on in the presentation where Stan will break and allow public comment. That'll take place right after the recap of the recent meetings that we hosted focusing on downtown stakeholders. So with that, I'd like to introduce Stan Popovich, our Community Development Director.
Thank you, Dave. Good evening, council members. Good evening, members of the audience. As Manager Fieldman noted, we're talking about our downtown development regulatory framework here tonight, our second meeting that we've had on this. I've posted an agenda on the side here to sort of explain what we're going over and what we'll be talking about. So first we'll be reviewing the project very briefly, recap the council meeting we had in August, talk about the two stakeholder meetings we held earlier this month, go over a couple of topics for further discussion, permitted special uses and architectural design control, and then talk about parking regulations. So as you all know, the project is based off the comprehensive plan, recommendations of the comprehensive plan, and development of framework, bulk regulations, zoning regulations, setbacks, height, all those items. So we've had a few meetings about this, and Comprehensive Plan Committee and Plan Commission talked about this as well. At our last, so we're already on to item number 2 here, so we're moving along pretty good. At our last August meeting with council, we talked about our 4 potential zoning districts here, the downtown core, principally around Main and Curtis, the downtown edge 1, surrounding the core, downtown edge 2, a little bit further out, and then downtown transition. The maps are shown here, and then we've also posted a couple of the other maps, same maps on the walls as well for viewing over there as well. We also talked about the geographic boundaries of each of those items, each of those districts, height restrictions in those districts we talked about. Some are getting a little taller, some are getting smaller. Density allowances in those districts, so how many units per acre can you build on a particular property? And then also we talked about setbacks and what those setbacks would be for each of the different zoning classifications. We did come to some concurrence on those items, but then council decided that it was important to get additional public input. And so based on that direction, staff held 2 meetings for downtown stakeholders. Prior to those meetings, we created this webpage that you could go to and view, and you could get a lot of information there. The video we posted all the new maps that we created, opportunities to attend a couple of different meetings, the meeting here tonight as well. And then you could compare your zoning as well by doing a simple address search. You can pop up what was going to happen, what was potentially going to happen to your property. And so those are some of the pages that we see here tonight with sort of the yellow tab at the top. I know Commissioner Earl's got one right here, and they're out in the hall as well, if anybody wanted to see those as well. So we got a lot of feedback from the downtown stakeholders. We had 17 folks participate over the 2 meetings, one on a Monday evening and one in the middle of the day on a Wednesday. So we had some really good feedback that way. And we had some particular areas of concern that those residents and business owners came to talk about. And they primarily focused on when we were transitioning primarily from a downtown business zoning use, current zoning classification to a downtown transition area. And some of those concerns we heard were about the reduction in height, the reduction in density, and then the additional setbacks that's going to also incorporate then if those proposed changes were incorporated. So that would reduce potentially the buildable area on the plot, and then reduce that area for also some parking ability to put some parking spaces on the lot as well. So those were some of the concerns we heard. We heard some concerns about loss of height in the downtown core area here, and just south of the tracks on Main Street. And we also heard concerns about the removal of drive-throughs in that area as well. So those were some of the key comments that we heard out of it. It was a very well-attended meeting, and we were able to speak one-on-one with people and to talk about those and some of those concerns. I do see some of those residents and business owners that were here for those meetings here again tonight. And so at this point, Mayor Pro Tem, if you'd like to open it up to hear some of their comments and get the straight from the horse's mouth, I turn it back over to you.
Okay. As was stated, the last time we did this, we all talked amongst ourselves until very late into the evening, and those of you who spent time to come here really didn't have a chance to speak. So, at this point, any member who's here to see, any person in the audience that wishes to address us regarding these issues that have been raised, I invite you to stand up, state your name, and let us know what you're thinking. Okay.
919 Rogers, my friend. Okay. Now, the last meeting with the village manager, with the board wasn't here, but with the village manager, and we were discussing the height requirements and the setbacks and that. And one of the things, my concern was, right now, the building on Warren Avenue is basically a 5-story brick building from our side. Warren's, it's 4-story. But with the foundation, it's a 5-story building. We're talking close to 70 foot without the additional height in there. My problem is, I was saying, you were saying with the easement in the back of 20 feet, my problem was the fact, any one of you, if you take 20 feet away from this building, turn around and look back, and picture a 5-story brick wall, how many people, if you develop in that area, is going to want that for a backyard? I mean, it's going to be like a prison, you'll be like in a prison exercise yard. Developers would turn around and say, well, we're not going to do, we can't do anything with that. Or if they do develop it, people that are going to want to buy it are going to say,
well, let me interrupt him 1 second. I'm his neighbor.
Tell us your name then,
My name
please.
is Cindy Rizzo.
Okay.
Our lots are only 100 deep.
These lots up here?
Yeah.
So you're taking 20 feet off the back end, and you're taking frontage, because right now, we can go up to the sidewalk. So I guess our concern is, what can you possibly put in that area?
So you want the setbacks reduced, that's what I'm hearing?
Well, the setback reduced and...
The height.
And, well, not only the height, but the easement in the back. You already allowed the building on Warren to go to the 0 property line. Right next door to me is the Tivoli parking lot. That is also right up against our property line. So now, with only a 50-foot wide property, you have a setback, or a side setback of 5 feet on each side. There isn't enough room for a house and a driveway to go along with that. Right now, our garage was built some 80, some 90, almost 90 years ago, and it's all the way back at the back end of the property. If you had to move that 20 feet, you couldn't put a two-car garage in there. I mean, there's no way. Even if you turned it around and put it behind the house, that would give you your 20 feet, and you'd be sitting there, you'd be, like I said, I mean...
There's no side, there's no
Right,
side.
there's no side, nothing in the back that would allow you to feel like you're claustrophobic. I mean, like I said, it'd be...
So you want more buildable area on the lot?
More buildable area, and the height requirement, since you've already got a 5-story building right behind us, since you already have a, I mean, to reduce...
Where are we on this map?
So this is, so go ahead, Steve.
So you're right here. So you're right in this area. This is Washington, this is Rogers. So you're right in that area right there. This is the new 922 development. The Tivoli Theater is right here, and the parking lot's right here. So you're right here in this area.
Okay, and Washington here is going to be 70 feet.
As proposed, this is downtown transition, which would be the same as what's currently proposed for you as well.
Okay, so I'm
Which
here.
is three stories.
3 stories, correct.
The tracks are here.
This track's right there, yeah.
Okay, so where is the, what's it called? The media place right now? You know, where the, there's a service station. Where's the service station?
The service station's right here. at the
Okay.
corner, yeah.
Okay, so here's the service station. Across the street right here, that's going to be 70 feet.
That's proposed to be DE 1, so that would be 72 feet, 6 stories.
Okay,
yes.
so we're going to be surrounded by 70 feet all the way here, 70 feet, 70 feet. And we're going to be kind of sunk in as residents. And if with the setbacks, what could we possibly build in a 50 by 100 building, you know, lot space?
So you'd be looking at, are you saying you want the zoning to be the same as the lot?
Why wouldn't all of this be the same?
How many of the fellow property owners in that section there feel the same
It's
way?
myself, it's Mike, and Mr. Johnson from the Tivoli, which he's already got 70 feet. I'm sure he would like 70 feet.
And basically, that rectangle that's marked DT, you want that to be the same as the remainder of the block. And if I, let me repeat back what I heard, because you can tell me if I understood it right. That what's proposed with the side yard, front yard, and rear yard setbacks,
It's impossible.
the allowable buildable area is so small, you can't fit anything in there.
You would have to put a shoebox in there.
I think I understand what you're saying, okay.
Whether it be, you know, as a commercial or you know, residential, I mean, nobody's going to be able to build anything, even if somebody tried to buy this strip and build multi-family units.
So if they combined it all, the side setbacks would merge together, but
But
that's...
Mr. Johnson owns the properties over here already.
Yeah, he bought the end
He
of the block.
owns
Plus,
these and up to here. So it's really our 2 properties and a parking lot.
so it's, yeah.
No, actually, it's 3 properties.
Yeah.
Because it's Shoelady.
Right.
Yeah, there's 3 properties.
So if, like I said, if...
So we're kind of our 3 properties are getting swallowed up. Because, well,
I mean, basically what it's going to do is devalue our properties, because the developer is going to turn around and say, well, gee, I'm very limited on what I'm going to be able to build here. So, you know, we're going to offer you, you know, minimum money for these properties, you know, if you'll sell to us. I mean, we won't have any value left at all for what...
Well, let me speak briefly about where we stand in the process on this, and you can ask me further questions about that. I feel comfortable, I understand what you're saying. I can talk to my fellow council, my fellow commissioners, see if they understand it as well. We're not making a decision this evening. Right. I'm not prepared to make a decision this evening. It's not even first reading. If you watch the other meetings, we have all these conversations, then we have a first reading, and then even after that, we vote. So we're a long ways away from a vote.
Like I said, I mean, we've already, this is third meeting.
But it's important that you be here.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why I said, I just wanted to, you know, let you know that this, you know, this
So I think,
is our concerns, that, you know, that this would basically destroy any chance.
I do want to say that there's probably maybe a half dozen, maybe not quite that many, actually, this map here. The areas that are circled in blue are the areas where similar concerns, where these types of things exist. So if you're comfortable, I think, unless any of us have questions for you, we know where you're coming from. I don't know yet where we're going, but we know where you're coming from, and we need to think about it more, talk about it more. Anything else you want to add about that? Anybody in council have questions? Yes.
Oh, no, not for them. Actually, Stan, just to the north.
Okay, thank you.
Is that an apartment building or condo building? I forget what's just to the north of these properties we're talking about.
At Washington
Right,
Rogers,
across
there's
Rogers.
single-family homes going up towards the park.
Okay.
Across the park.
Across the street.
And then across the street, there's apartments, and then apartments, and then we got single-family.
I think they're condos.
Principally single-family there. But on these two corners at Ryan Place, there's, I believe, a 3-story apartment building at both corners.
3 stories.
Or maybe 2 in a garden unit.
Okay. All right, thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay. Other people have similar issues for their parts of downtown. Tell us your name, please.
My name's Pat Smith. I own a building at 5116 Forest. Carlos here.
We're creating that much money in a lot of this.
5116 Forest, Dean, want to help us out here?
Yeah, I see Forest, find Forest, find the tracks.
Right here.
Right there. Across from the library.
Okay, this little dot there is Carlos. If you go 20 feet from the back and 20 feet from the front, there isn't anything.
Oh, she'll put a
left.
flagpole up.
She could put a pup tent there. That's about it, and it has to be triangular. I've got the second. Again, 20 feet off the front, 20 feet behind it is a gazebo and some open space that's there anyway, and a building that's a lot taller than 3 stories. And then behind that is,
So you're saying the setbacks won't work for you?
I think, we ought to be D1 or D2, not transition. I mean, it's like you're putting a lower valley in the middle of taller buildings. That's not a transition. It looks kind of funny. The best use for that land is obviously for those 4 units that belong to some developer who put something other than 4 1850s houses there. 1840s maybe. But,
You have to move them somewhere then.
the houses?
No.
The creek runs through it.
Let me say what I said to the people that spoke a couple minutes ago. I feel comfortable, I understand what you're saying. If there's other commissioners here that have questions about it, let's take this all into account. You need to keep paying attention because we're not making a decision tonight, we're not voting. It's not even what we call technically a first reading. So we're still a ways away from making a decision. But I think I saw the manager making notes, I believe the community developers making notes. So I think you've been heard. But don't lose track of the process because, I'm not encouraging you to lose track of the process, but check back to make sure that we're taking those concerns into account as we modify and revise these plans as we go forward. But I'm comfortable, I heard what you're saying.
Did I just say something?
Absolutely.
Okay, we bought this little...
I'm sorry, can you say your name, please?
Sure, Ann Carla. I bought this little house like 100 years ago. And Betsy Downer's, I think her name was Betsy Downer, she lived there. Mrs. Downer lived next door. She built the house for her daughter. Her daughter died early, after childbirth, I believe. So we've owned it all these years, and we love it. It's like an antique house. It's only 20 feet deep, a 20-foot setback. It would be puff in the air. There would be nothing left of it, Sort of like Kansas City, wind blows and it goes off to Alice in Wonderland's place. So I don't see how you can do that to us.
Well, I think what I would say is that these regulations are more of a generic nature, and the reason we're having these meetings is to look for specific quirks in how Downers Grove was laid out 150 years ago, so that we can find where doing it by the book, so to speak, doesn't really work so well. And that's why we're doing
It's
this.
like we're real people,
Well, I hope I'm always a real person. Okay, thank you.
What was your address? 5120.
Yeah, these are all the houses across west of the library. Really narrow lots. Yeah, it's problematic.
4 little white houses.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, anybody else that came to see us this evening that would like a chance to speak to us and to staff about your thoughts about about these zoning issues? Does anybody in the council want to talk about what they've heard thus far? And then we'll let staff continue with their presentation. I think you're back up.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So we're down to item number 4 on the agenda. So we're going to be talking a little bit about permitted and special uses. So permitted uses are uses that somebody can come in today and open tomorrow. Special uses require village council approval, so there's a little bit more review of those items. So currently we have 2 zoning districts, downtown business and downtown transition. The business use, as it's portrayed, is more of a business use. So we allow shops, restaurants, dry cleaners, art studios, daycares, offices, apartments, and condos in the downtown business zoning district. So principally commercial, but we do have some residential allowed in there. And the transition, it's a transition area as we move from more of a business-oriented use to single-family residential neighborhoods around the district, around the downtown. So you can see we allow more uses that are more compatible with single families. We allow single-family, duplex, townhomes, apartments. We also allow offices, daycare, small art studios, and small beauty salons as well. So as we transition out of those areas, we get the more or less the bulk of the buildings is coming down through bulk, and then also through the uses they become more blendable with single-family residential. So as we look at the 4 new zoning districts, what we see is we're trying to maintain a business core throughout the core and the edge 1 and edge 2. And then in the transition, try to maintain that transition to the residential areas here. So you'll see we do have very similar uses moving throughout. Now the daycare is one of them in the packet that we've noticed, not in the downtown core, but it's in the edge 1 and the edge 2, because there tends to be more space to be able to have a daycare with some outdoor play areas for the children, which is required in the zoning ordinance. And then we move into a recommendation of a bed and breakfast in these areas as well. And then we go into the transition area. We carry a lot of these same regulations down and uses down from the transition to the transition. It's principally how we meld these 2 and split them out into 4. And so these are some of the key principal uses that we see that are permitted in those zoning districts. Now the zoning ordinance really has this land use table that we use for all of our zoning districts. So whether you're in the downtown, on Ogden Avenue, down 75th Street, wherever, it's a big table. And in the old zoning ordinance, before we updated in 2014, it was by list. So I had to look for a restaurant. I had to look for a haberdashery. I like to always throw that one out there. But so now what we've done is we've categorized them so it's easier for staff to make interpretations when somebody comes up with a new use that we just haven't envisioned, instead of having to look at the list and go, it's not on the list, you're not in. Now we've categorized these things into items such as building services, which are like contractor shops, or personal improvement services, which is a fancy term for gyms and yoga studios. So there are, in these use tables, we've categorized them to make it easier for staff to interpret. Sometimes it's a little harder for folks to be able to find something. There's a paragraph that explains them all and staff knows what they are, and we can help them find it. But it's just a good way for us to interpret and to be able to categorize things when they come in, when they're not specifically listed. And so you can see in this use table, the DB and the DTs here, and then we have the 4 proposed districts on the right-hand side. And so this is how we've determined what sort of uses are permitted and special uses. And in most instances where they've been special uses in the downtown business, we've maintained them as special uses in the core and in the edge as well as we went out through. So we didn't try to change anything to make it from a special to a permitted use. Now the difference with uses comes into play is if you change from a downtown business district to a transition district, that's obviously going to change the use allowances because you're going from more of a commercial area into more of a transition into residential areas as well. So at this point, I'll offer and answer any questions that I can about uses.
I just wanted to sort of add a little bit. The last meeting, we had just started to talk about these issues as a council in the community. And specific questions came up about breweries. I think we addressed the bed and breakfast that came up. There was a couple others about transportation-related uses. So we're happy to answer any questions the council may continue to have, trying to get some direction as we move forward on this.
Once again, do any of our visitors have comments or questions regarding permitted uses in the various parts of downtown? Before we turn to, yes. State your name again, please, because you're
Cindy
being...
Rizzo.
Okay, thank you.
So, in the downtown transition area, with single-family duplex and all the things that are listed, specifically going back to the map that I'm supposed to be going to transition, I don't know how some of those uses could actually be in effect due to parking restrictions on our streets. The bed and breakfast, when I actually moved into our property, I had to take out my whole backyard to put parking in back of my building. There's a lot of restrictions down that street. We've got a lot of parking from the Tivoli. So as far as having a beauty salon, I don't know where all the people will park.
Let me give that a shot, and staff can jump in. Downtown transition is more than that one particular block. And it may be that a given parcel within the transition zone is not suitable for certain types of businesses. There's just not enough area.
Right.
But there's other parts of the transition area where there's room for that. So you got to make all the rules. So if you don't have enough room for parking, you probably can't have that kind of business. Even if it's a permitted use, you still got to follow the other rules. So your parcel being small...
Doesn't have hardly any of these proposed uses
That's
are
another-
even available.
That's another reason to change it to a different classification possibly and allow a different type of use.
Okay.
I think it may be helpful and informative to jump ahead in our program. Stan was going to talk about parking changes later, but I think since it's come up, we could probably just hit that right now. Everybody get that?
I apologize. So with the existing parking regulations, again, using a similar slide with the existing and proposed, right now in the downtown business zoning district, the only uses that require parking are residential units and large medical offices at 1.4 unit parking spaces per unit, and then 4.5. There's no other parking required for anything in any other business use, commercial use in the downtown business zoning classification. Currently, when we come to downtown transition, we require 2 spaces per residential unit, and then it varies based on the type of use. So if you're an office, it's 3.5 parking spaces per 1,000. If you're a medical, it's 4.5. If you're a theater, there's certain parking requirements for that in the transition. If you're a dry cleaner, there's certain parking requirements for that. And so what we've tried to do and what we're looking at doing is maintaining sort of these downtown business parking requirements for both the core, the edge, and the edge 2, where we're still in the downtown, more commercial-oriented areas. So there's really only parking required for residential and medical, just based on the turnover and how many people come to a medical office and stay for a while, and then trying to get people in and out. And then in the transition, maintaining that 2 for residential, but then maintaining the requirements for parking as they're currently written. So we're not any proposed changes to the parking requirements. And the parking's in the zoning ordinance, I believe it's Article 7 if I'm correct. And there's a use table that shows what the uses are and how many parking spaces you would have to provide for those uses. And then there are provisions, if you have an existing office and another office is moving in, you don't have to provide additional parking if it's a same use for a same use. But if you were to go from an office and only need 2 spaces to a restaurant and need 20 spaces on Ogden Avenue, then there's provisions for that to accomplish that as well. So there's some intricacies with changing uses for parking requirements.
So on the point here that the proposed downtown transition, there would be on-site parking required for many of the permitted uses in the district, right?
Correct, yes.
I think that goes to the question, this particular block may not be well suited for a DT classification. Okay. Anybody else from the public who's here before we keep moving forward? Okay. What's up next?
I believe we were going to go to architectural design control here now.
Are we going to scroll through the agenda on the right, or are we going to actually talk about like uses, for instance? What's the intention for tonight?
We had proposed some breaks to actually, if you want to talk about uses, we just presented that, so that would be appropriate.
I'll revisit some of the stuff I had mentioned last time. This is not changed from before, right?
Yes, it's
A
not.
month ago. Okay. Yeah, bigger version of my eyes. There were some DT in particular uses that I thought maybe we should add some both permitted and special uses in the DT areas. So I guess I'd like to just get these into the record for consideration. Obviously, as Bill described, we're not deciding this evening. So working down the list here, grooming and veterinary care in the DT, thinking there should be some provisions for that, whether they're permitted or special, we could get to, but I think that some of those areas, at least as they're currently mapped, it would be entirely reasonable to have either grooming or veterinary care opportunities. We talked about this research service. I guess I need some more definition on what research service means and what it could mean. That sounds very much like it could be an office-related kind of an activity that could happen. If it's marketing research, for instance, you could see a marketing research company operating out of a converted home, for example.
Can I read what it says for you?
Yeah, but then tell me how you might interpret that.
Sure.
That's the
hard
million-dollar
question
question.
about it. Right. It's uses engaged in scientific research and testing services leading to the development of new products and processes.
Yeah.
Such uses resemble office buildings or campuses and do not include the mass production, distribution, or sale of products. Research services do not produce odors, dust, noise, vibration, or other external impacts that are detectable beyond the property lines of the subject property. So market research would work. Could be a small science lab that was doing something as long as there were no odors and stuff like that. So that's how we would generally interpret that.
So that, I could see how we could want to consider allowing those in some of those DT areas. The goal of these things, guys, is not because I think I know what should do it, but I think what we want to try and do is create a situation where our downtown is as attractive as possible for business enterprise to get, to want to locate. It's a challenging thing in our downtown to constantly fill space and to create an environment that's vibrant. So whenever a landowner or a business owner decides to move on for whatever reason, I think we'd like to have as much flexibility as possible in backfilling that with whatever might be in demand. So I'm generally trying to loosen, if you will, the B's and S's in the DT column. Going down a little bit more, restaurant, wine boutique, again, in our DT area. I think to some of the things that I see in other communities, Glen Ellen and Naperville in particular, Long Grove's another one, there may be some really logical situations where you would have that type of use in a current DT building. Keep in mind, we've always got this secondary set of rules about zoning, so it doesn't necessarily mean it fits. And to some of your questions, because it's zone DT and use is permissible, to actually operate that business would still require meeting a variety of other rules, like parking, for instance. So that doesn't mean that every one of these properties could be a restaurant, but the idea that it's not right now at all, even a permitted or special use, is to me is bothersome. Moving on to same thing as financial service. That sounded to me a lot like research. You can see a financial service, either your local whomever, I won't brand this thing, but you can certainly see that operating just like an attorney's group. And then some of the retail stuff, actually looking at that change. Yeah, so convenience goods, consumer shopping. We actually added this line, guns and firearms. I'm thinking that all of those retail sale things, we might want to consider a special use opportunity in DT. Not to pick any particular product that might be for sale, but how we define retail sales. Retail sales can be an awful lot of things as long as it's just really truly to the end user public. If that's how we're using the word retail, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a convenience store or it's a bike. It can be a lot of things. And it dovetails into this, down we got a section called under industrial, artisan industrial. I think I was trying to describe before these, you're really on that edge when you think about, somebody help me with the name, Linda? Linda's not, she's ignoring me on purpose. I didn't hear me too. What's the name of the brush?
Gordon
Gordon Brush, thank you. You know, you're treading awfully close to this. Is that artisan, is it industrial, is it retail sales? You know, what is it exactly? And so the idea of making allowance for special use in some sort of retail activity in some of the DT areas is something I'd like us to really think through. And that's the end of my list.
So I just want to recap, make sure we captured that. Adding uses to the proposed DT district in the permitted category: research services, restaurant and wine boutiques, financial services. In the special use category, consider retail or artisan or the maker type uses. And then one that could be either permitted or special: grooming and veterinary care. We capture that right, Buck?
Capture that right. I don't know if I know whether they're P's or S's at this point.
Right.
But they're trying to add to the uses that might be possible in some of the DT areas in those categories.
At this point, I want to jump in with some comments that will apply both to the use discussion and later to, it's a sort of a preamble to where I'm looking at some of the architectural design issues. And it has more about the larger process. Page 2 of our September staff report and page 3 of the staff report for this evening has a great little flow chart. I blew it up here. It says what it is that we're doing here, and that this council's already adopted the comprehensive plan. That's done. And now our task is to adopt a regulatory framework and follow on by a zoning ordinance that actually implements the vision that's found in the comprehensive plan. So as we evaluate uses, as we evaluate design standards, things like that, I'll go back to the one rule of design that I love best, is form follows function. What's our goal? And our goal is to implement the desired state of downtown. Turn the vision that's found in the comprehensive plan, turn that vision into reality. And there's many different roads that might get us there, and I don't want to get bogged down into one particular road or another particular road as long as we end up at the final goal. At least for me, the desired state of downtown is well articulated by the 2008 pattern book. And I'll pull out a few things. It's the symbolic heart of our community. It's pedestrian focused rather than automobile focused. It's a place where people want to spend time on foot. And it's going to require synergy between a variety of, you have to balance a lot of different things. Architectural details, mixture of land uses, pedestrian considerations, appropriate building heights, street walls and storefronts, compact street grid, public spaces and gathering areas. So as we talk about uses, this is, I'm not decided yet. First floor real estate office, first floor bank maybe, first floor stockbroker may not help get us to the vision that we want. Maybe it will. We'll have to decide about that. But I'm not comfortable just saying today, well, the free market decides. I mean, I think there has to be a higher level of planning than that. How far we go with that, I'm not done thinking about that yet. But the goal is to create a place where people want to spend time on foot. That's why I just blunt, I don't think the DuPage medical option promotes that vision of downtown, personally. It's a great business. There's lots of places I like to see them. I don't think that particular business promotes the vision that I want for downtown, which I think is found in the 2008 plan. But anyways, as we talk about all these things, whether design review is the right way to go or not, I don't know. But I think that's something we just have to keep going back to what the goal is, which in my opinion is to create in reality the vision that's found in the pattern book and incorporated in the comprehensive plan.
That's a great segue, Mayor White. And Stan has got queued up for us as a discussion of sort of the architectural and building features. But before we go there, I just want to make sure, were there any other council member discussions on permitted or special uses in the district?
I'm wondering about the special use for drive-in or drive-through facilities. We don't allow it anyplace else in the downtown, but in downtown transition we do. But we're talking about walkable, and we want walkable, and drive-in, drive-through is not walkable. So is this something we want to keep, or is this something we want to go away?
Can we pull up the map of the zoning districts? Yeah. So, Commissioner, you're talking about in the downtown transition district?
Yeah, but I'm looking at the chart here. It's not, the only place it's allowed as a special use is the DT district. which would be the outlier edges.
So currently what it is that there's a bank here with a drive-through, and that's currently zoned downtown business. So that's a lawful, non-conforming use. And in the current zoning classification, and then there's another drive-through
Right.
at Burlington right there.
Mhm.
In the current zoning classification, those are both lawful, non-conforming. And then in the proposed downtown transition and the downtown core, we wouldn't permit any drive-through uses, so no new drive-through uses would be permitted, but the existing ones would still maintain their not lawful, non-conforming use.
Right, anything we change now, everything that's there already is still going to be legal non-conforming, for lack of a better term. So it's not like we're making it go away, but if the land were to redevelop, they weren't going to redevelop in, I know there's an overlap if one use goes out and one bank goes out and the other one goes in a week or 2 weeks or whatever, a month. It's still the same use. I get that. But the question is if it goes away and it goes on the market and it's sold, that doesn't go along with it.
Correct.
And I'm wondering if we want to leave that in the downtown transition or not. If we have the,
Right, so technically, people's properties as far out as Carpenter Street,
Right.
right, could apply for a special use for a drive-through.
right.
That's the concern, right? And other places too, but as an example. Okay.
I mean, now you're letting them be in places where maybe we don't want them either. You know, as a special use, yes, I know it still has to come to the council as a special use, but it's a question, do we want to open the door?
Could we, this is maybe a legal question, only permit special uses for property that adjoins Main Street?
I've seen those techniques used.
We could put some sort of regulation.
That's interesting.
Because, I mean, to be very blunt, the West Suburban Bank, I don't think there's going to be a walkable pedestrian destination south of that.
Yeah.
So it doesn't bother me.
Right, no.
And I'm big on getting rid of drive-throughs, but that one doesn't bother me.
No, I understand, because you're talking about the outer fringe of it, but then again, once again, we're talking about everything in DT. So there's a lot of DT up there, and do we want to open the door?
But rather than naming a street, DT that borders, that has frontage on a county highway, a county something like that.
Yeah, and that'd be like 4 or 5 properties, it looks like there, so that's something we could consider. That might address the concern that Mark's bringing up.
Well, but going to Bill's point, I think, Marge's point is spot on. And I think Bill, it goes to speaks to what you were talking about, or what are we trying to create? These various zoning changes that we're proposing are not about regulating what's there today. They're about when change comes, which it's going to. What do we hope it will become, right?
Yes.
And I don't think, I've been part of a conversation in 9 years, evaluating comp plans twice, evaluating pattern books once, where we've come back thinking, any group of people has come, residents or councils have come back thinking, what we need to do is make sure we carve out some space for drive-throughs downtown. That's just not part of our conversation in any sense. And so, while there certainly are some, and I know we're not trying to zone them out per se, I think we are saying, I think we have said with consistent voice for 9 years and 3 ad hoc committees and everything else, that generally we don't want drive-through activities in the downtown that we're trying to make as walkable as possible. I'm inclined to think, we'll not decide tonight, but I'm certainly inclined to think that Marge's point is exactly right. We probably ought to just take them out.
I see a lot of heads nodding there. I think we'll bring that back for...
We're not deciding tonight, but I think those are legitimate points. Absolutely.
It's important, too, to note some of the initial conversations this evening, that idea that these changes don't prevent the existing use from continuing is really important for everybody in this room tonight and that are watching to hear and understand. It doesn't mean we're going to somehow compel a change of use or a redevelopment. It just means that when it comes at some point, we're hoping that it's different. And that's just a reality about long-term planning for a downtown area.
Okay. Any other questions, comments on land uses before we go on to the architectural design issues? Next up.
Space here. Okay, so as Commissioner White, there's a variety of approaches, and it's really important just to remember that we have to pick what's best for what's best for the community. There's pros and cons for each approach. We currently have an approach where we have design guidelines, which are voluntary until they become mandatory as they come up to village councils. So once it's something where it's a special use or planning and development that comes before you, it's in staff's report about how they meet or do not meet the design guidelines that we set place, and then it's ultimately in some of the standards of approval whether they meet the plans that the village has as well. So we have to remember that to their guidelines, but then once they come up to the village council level, they're really mandatory requirements. The design guidelines were developed in January of 2009. They're based on the pattern book that Mayor Pro Tem White mentioned today, and they're administered by staff. Staff reviews the developments, and the key things that we look at is the building base, which is number 1 on the bottom there, the building middle, and the building top. So those are the 3 things that staff reviews and uses the guidelines to look at. So in the base, we're really looking for transparent windows. On the main core, you get people walking through, you have activity, articulated entry features, complementary building materials. EFIS and CMU are discouraged. We want to differentiate between important building features, whether it's an entry, it's a shop, it's a restaurant with some tables out front. And a horizontal expression to sort of establish the ground level. So when we have multiple story buildings, we want to make sure we establish a ground level. And so I'll show a few examples from the downtown. So this is the Acadia building here, and you can see we have a horizontal expression here with this band of masonry and stone there. We've got some good windows at the bottom there as well that go down the ground. There's some knee walls in there as well. So it's a really good way to do it. And then there's also some important features here where you see columns running all the way down through the building to articulate entrances as well. So that's how Acadia meets it in that instance, and this was prior to the design guidelines. If we look at 5100 Forest, which is going up right now, this really has an articulated entry here with this large glass area here coming in. I was at a planning conference, they talked about terminating vistas, and I almost jumped up and down and said, hey, we got one, we're doing one right now. It's just the planning geek in me coming out. But this is really good here with this interesting entry feature, the materials with the brick and the glass, and then some of the panels here. It really provides it here, especially across the front, and then this sort of up and down, which goes from the base down to the middle and all the way to the top as well. And then if we look at the middle of the building, so this is basically floors 1 through 3 or 4, you look for windows in rhythm, so that there's a pattern to it, and it's a rhythmic building. Visual interest, whether that's the lights and the lights are divided, the windows are divided into different things, whether it's just 6/1, you see some sills and lintels. You want to see appealing design through detailing and openings, massing, and how the building moves in and out. Articulate corner buildings, and then again, complementary building materials from the base up through the middle there as well. So if we look again at Acadia, we see windows in rhythm. We've got a thinner window, thicker window, and we got this column. Then we go thin window, thicker window, column, and it moves around the building. So you definitely see that pattern that way. And then we've got articulations where these balconies come out a little bit. We've got a little bit of cornice work there and some stones up here. So you really see it in this building as well and how we pull those details out as well. If you look at the building in Main and Maple here that's going up, you can see that again here, how we got a rhythm to the building. We've got a column down, a column out, that comes down, another column, and we really move the massing of the building in and out with some juts for balconies sticking out a little bit there as well. So you see that sort of rhythm there with that going down Maple Avenue here, and you see it over here as well where we got balcony, window, balcony, and then window at the corner, and then when it flips it onto the Main Street side as well. So it looks this way, so you can achieve it either horizontally or you can achieve it up and down, and architects decide to do it whichever way, but we just look at it to make sure that there's some rhythm to the building on that one. And then particularly with 5100 Forest, they've really done the corner articulation here really well with the windows and the paneling here to catch the corner of Forest and Gilbert. And then similarly here you can see the pattern here where they've separated some of the materials here where there's brick in some of this, and then at the top floor it's paneling there as well. So it really changes the building up a little bit, adds a little bit of dimension to it, adds some visual interest. And again, we get rhythm to the windows that are on the Forest Avenue side, and this is the Gilbert Avenue side. And then you've got some of these balconies that protrude out. So you really don't have just a massive wall straight up and down. You've got some ins and outs of the massing of the building is what we look at and look to see. And then at the top, we look for distinctive cornices and corners, and then also to screen the mechanical equipment. So we do that through a variety of manners. So you can see with the Acadia again, you can see sort of the articulated and really extended out cornice here that pops out a few feet from the building that you can see there. And also you can see up on the top of the building here, you have a sort of a faux terrace, a faux trellis up at the top as well. With the Main and Maple building, you see again with these different roof lines that they have, and how this is one section's a little lower than the other one, and it brings it in and out that way, and then you have an extended overhang on the corners of those units as well, which help out bring some of the unique features out of the building. And then most of these parapets now are designed to screen the mechanical units, where they've built them tall enough so that the parapet extends above the flat part of the roof, so you'll screen the mechanical units via the parapet wall. And then again with 5100 Forest, you see the different roof lines here, the corner roof, which is arched to follow the corner treatment here. So a lot of very good differentiations on that. And then if I were to go back to the terminating vista photo, you can see there's a unique feature on the roof there as well. So that's a really good endpoint to Burlington Avenue. And then we also talk about facade elements as well. So this is everything from awnings and signs to outdoor cafes, protruding light fixtures, landscaping, benches, sort of the public area and the public features that the folks are going to see a lot of, and the balconies come into that as well. You can see with Acadia, we've got a lot of awnings here, down all throughout the building. You've got some landscaping here. This picture was probably taken in the early spring prior to Egg Harbor having the cafe out front, but there's activity on the street that people want to see, and it makes it more walkable, makes it more enjoyable for people to come out and enjoy the building, enjoy the town. If you look at Main and Maple, you see some landscaping along the facade there. It's a little hard to see, but there's light features here. There's an awning that wraps around the building some. So again, that's pulling sort of the first level, the ground floor down, and it also creates some interest and attraction on that side of the building as well. And then if we go back to 5100 Forest, you can see there's landscaping here. The way the topography works, these can almost act as almost seat walls for people. So if you're waiting for somebody to pick up a ride, you might be able to sit there. Particularly with this building, there's a cut-in for some parking there, so people can park there, maybe wait for a ride, be picked up. And again, there's trees and there's activities on the spaces. You have the balconies that protrude out. There's light fixtures at the main entrance as well. So staff looks at all of these things and evaluates them and makes sure that they're meeting the design guidelines and that they meet the intent of that. Every architect is going to have a different design, so you sort of have to be open to allowing that individual expression of the architect to come through, but still making sure that we have all of those elements that we're looking for in the design guidelines.
So before we turn it back over to council and community discussion on this, I wanted to reiterate something I think has maybe gotten lost as we've gone through these discussions. Stan said that we have design guidelines which are guidelines, except they become mandatory anytime the council approval is required. And so what that has actually meant is that every new building constructed in the downtown since 2009, every brand new building has been subjected to mandatory design guidelines. That's the way it's played out. There's been some significant remodels, which aren't necessarily, they were used as guidelines. Every new building constructed in the downtown since 2009 has been mandatory for compliance with these guidelines, which means that the staff has recommended and worked with the developer that says, okay, staff thinks these comply, and the council actually voted, and in their vote of yes, said yes, these comply. The Comprehensive Plan Committee and the Plan Commission recommendations on this issue, Comprehensive Plan Committee said, they saw Stan's presentation and said, we don't recommend any changes. This is working for our community. The Plan Commission recommendation was to go back and relook at the design guidelines to see if we should make any changes to them. The last point that I think a lot of us can get sort of confused over the application is the difference between bulk regulations and design of the building. A lot of folks have said certain buildings in our downtown, especially the new ones, are too big. Oh, that's not necessarily a design issue, that's a bulk issue. And with many of these proposed zoning changes that we talked about, the bulk requirements have been significantly reduced. Lower heights, more setbacks. So I think it's natural to say, oh, we may need changes to architectural design controls, when perhaps maybe it's the bulk issues that are at the heart of the concern for these buildings. So those are some perspectives. As Stan said, that you just have to pick whatever is right for our community and what works for us, and there's a variety of approaches. So with that as a background, we'll turn it over to Mayor White for further discussion.
First, I'll ask anybody who's here in the audience if they wish to make any comments or have questions about this aspect of our discussion. You're going once? Okay. And then I'll turn it over to my fellow commissioners.
Well, I think that some of what you're saying about whether or not it's design guidelines are mandatory or not, whether or not staff's been treating them that way, is the fact that by the time it does get to council, and by that time also gets out to the public feels that it's had no input and is being jammed down their throats. So it's a done deal because it's staff administered. Because it's staff administered. So the question then that becomes, because there's so much dislike for what's out there, and some of it may be just the massing, some of it may be the design as well. But is there a better process? Is there a better process to get the developer some feedback from the public, which I'm sure it wants to build a building that makes the public happy as well, so that everybody likes the building when it's done and not everybody is complaining about it. So is there a process that gets us that earlier? Is it a public review process much earlier before there are hard-drawn plans, so that everybody gets their input, and then we can see where it goes from there, but at least everybody feels like they've had their say way earlier in the process than after the fact, when you're looking at, something that just in your mind looks god-awful, well, but maybe if you were there for the explaining of it, at the beginning it might not have been. So I think that there's something to having something earlier, so that the people who are designing the building and who are putting these things in our downtowns do get some feedback from the community as well as staff. And that would serve us, I think, very well.
Well, actually, to pick up on that a little bit, I regret doing this and not doing this. Several weeks ago, I came across an article saying that members of the public don't feel involved when they're presented a finished plan. Do you like this? Because
and that's what this process is, because it's all administered. It shows up by the Planning Commission is the first time you get to see it.
Because at that point, and the amount of effort that would be needed to change it is very, 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 very significant. I'll find that article and I'll pass it on to show it around about how to have effective public engagement, so the public believes they've been engaged in addition to actually being engaged. And as the person who drafted the proposed resolution for an ad hoc design review committee, I do want to make a couple of points that my largest area of concern is when we fill in spaces with new buildings. So if there's an alternate way to make sure we have the right design when we fill in spaces with new buildings, that's definitely part of what I'm looking at. And I'm not interested in a change in tenants or a change in owner being a triggering event. So if Ballydoyle's decides to be sold, that's not a triggering event. And if they change a tenant, that's not a triggering event. But if they knock the building down and build a new one, maybe that is a triggering event. But that's also a little more complicated. If there's alternate routes to get to the goal, I'm fine with that. But we have to take an opportunity to look in this and see. But I'm mostly worried that when we fill in some of these drive-thrus that I want to get rid of, that the buildings that go in there fulfill the vision, and architectural design is part of, not all, but part of the vision of creating a downtown people want to be in. So as long as there's a process to do that, to keep your eye on the end prize, which is to have a core of downtown, which people love to walk up and down, and we just can't possibly, spend money. Yes, exactly. Okay, that's all I have to say about that for now, because I like the direction this is going.
Don't we have that process in play right now? There's two questions. Do we think the design guidelines themselves need adjustment? That's one question. is the process sufficient to drive us to the end goal is the second question. And they're not, I think they're kind of exclusive of each other. We have a process to do exactly what you're talking about, Bill. Somebody decides they want to take a drive-through out of US Bank and put a new building up there, is going to be a process that requires design review that will achieve the goals as we've got them stated now.
Unless it happens to be a by-right development. It just so happens that every new building since '09 had a residential component, and so therefore prompted a special use or planned development.
If it's pure business, so we have to we have to look more carefully at before I fully agree with you. I want to take a look at what's by right and what's our special uses. If everything was special use for a downtown building, then you'd be right.
But Marge's point is the one that I think I have, the design guidelines, we can talk about them for more. We've been talking about them. They've been reviewed periodically. They'll undoubtedly get reviewed again in a couple of years. But Marge's point about the process is the one that's most interesting to me. Is there a way to structure a process that causes the public to feel better about the engagement? It's not just this, it's almost every development, and it's just a function of our staff frankly doing a really good job of working with potential customers and trying to shepherd them through the process, so when it first comes to us, is it a done deal? Well, no, but it's pretty likely, because everybody's been working real hard to follow the rules.
Right.
Well, there's an assumption in there that if everybody who's been working on it thinks it complies, then it should be a pretty easy decision. But it does leave out that sort of engagement buy-in process, because if you're a resident, you show up and, this is a lot to take in all at once.
I'm interested in trying to figure out if there's a way we can adjust the process to facilitate that a little more. That they're be cautious about the risk of making it either complex or burdensome for people.
Yeah, it's that and solution, right? You still want quick and predictable.
It's got to be expeditious, predictable, and low cost.
And business friendly, but it also, what I'm seeing heads nod is engaged dialogue early in the process.
He's said it very well, so I've got no need to restate it.
I think that's all five, and I know we've talked to Commissioner Waldeck about these issues as well, so.
Anything else? Anything else with staff?
I did not have anything. So last thing we were going to do is parking, but we've already got that. So that would conclude our presentation for the evening.
Anybody here want a last chance to say anything about any part of the downtown presentation you saw this evening? This isn't final. Any member of council have anything they want to say further about anything we talked about this evening in the committee room?
I got a question, though. I'd like us to get, maybe not tonight, because we're probably not all prepared for it, but I'd like us to get a sort of a, dates and deliverables kind of thing for this process.
Don't look at me.
I'm sure.
Well, we've been a long way tonight.
I'm disappointed in the way it's gone so far, because I think we should have been actually making decisions the last time we met. I've been happy to make some tonight. I know you disagree with that, make public input. But we should propose some sort of a plan so that people understand, do they come back next week, do they come back the next 3 meetings, the next 17 meetings? When should they expect that there's going to be some decisions made?
Well, we'll put together a draft schedule. What's great about tonight is I think we really got, the staff, we got a ton of direction that we can reflect back the next time we see this, so. Thank you.
Okay. Anything further? If not, the chair will invite a motion to adjourn. Well, I'm sorry, absolutely.
I'm Kathy Ziscoso on Main Street, 5109, 5111. I was just hoping that, I think I'm special, so I would like some sort of a meeting, a one-on-one meeting.
Which property are you?
About my property at 5109.
And what business is that?
Heritage House.
Okay. Well, I can tell you that there has been specific discussion about a hypothetical variation process. That's all I'm going to say publicly, but your concerns are known to all of us.
And I have a driveway that goes onto Main Street that concerns me about what you decide. So I would like some one-on-one conversation.
Okay, absolutely. Anybody else? Okay, now I invite a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.